Hey, what's up, YouTube? It's Richie from Boston. It has been a while. I was unable to do live streams, but I am back. My camera is in a strange place, so I got to get used to that. But I thought about doing live streams, and I wanted to figure out who I would have on. So the first person that came to mind was Gary Wayne, the author of the Genesis 6 Conspiracy. I've had him on several times before, and he never disappoints. So, Gary, how you doing today? Are you hearing me loud and clear?
I am hearing you loud and clear, and I am so excited to be back working with you, Richie. Looking forward to whatever we're going to talk about today, because I think what we'll do is shed some light on some things and raise some curiosity, which is what we're trying to do, is get information out there.
Absolutely. Here's a strange thing, and I mean, this is perfect to have you on, seeing how, I mean, I'll call you an expert. I know you don't call yourself that, but on September 11th at 11:45 a.m., which numerically comes out to 9/11 once again, they released a news article that says the first red heifer born in Israel for 2,000 years triggers Armageddon fears. Have you seen this story as of yet?
I have heard rumblings about the red heifer, and people have been looking for it. I've also heard about it being coming, to being even a few years ago. So I don't know what the veracity of it is, but there is a significance to all of this talk, that's for sure.
I mean, I can't imagine that it came out on the September 11th. I mean, are they trying to get people concerned?
Oh, I think so. I mean, just because, I think what people need to do is take a step back and say that when information is coming out like this, that there's always an agenda to it. It's either misinformation to hide something, or it's being used to manipulate in a particular direction and for a particular cause. And I think a lot of us out there think that we may not be in the end time yet, but certainly the end time is on the horizon. And so they have been prepping people and brainwashing them for all sorts of apocalyptic fears and everything. Everything is designed to say that, we're going to destroy ourselves from the face of the earth, so that they can actually contrive some catastrophes, I think, to force people into accepting a universal religion and a universal government. And there's a little bit more to their plan than that, but everything is done for a purpose, and everything is done for preparation for when they're actually able to pull this thing off. I mean, they would pull it off tomorrow if they could, except that the restrainer hasn't been removed yet. So one has to understand that they can't do anything until the restrainer is moved, no matter how they try. But once that happens, everything is in place to do things quickly. So I think that is all part of that whole sort of play that is continuous. So, and when we're talking about the red heifer, that would be very much a very strong signal for the people who may not be aware, to that the sacrifice might be on the wing of the temple that Daniel talks about, might be there soon, and that somehow the Jewish people are going to get access to the temple, or access on a wing of the temple.
Well, that basically lays it out. You can't help but notice that they release it on September 11th, because they know they did so much psychological damage on that date. So why not roll it out today?
Yeah, and just while people are remembering and the fearful aspect of the terrorism that I think they're behind in causing, for the most part, the globalist forces, and I think they fund most of these terrorist organizations. At least that's my view on things. So that they can create anarchy to bring things about. So they're causing the anarchy and the fear, and then they're doing things to remind us of the fear and how bad things are going to get, so that we're not looking in the right direction for salvation, but we're going to look to go into their arms for protection and salvation.
Let me ask you. I'm looking at the. I think I'm screen sharing. You guys got to cut me some slack, because I'm a little bit rusty. I'm trying, Gary. I'm trying. I should have the Oath of the Jesuits up right now. Now, this thing's been debunked a number of times. I know that some of your expertise lies in this exact area. We have a Jesuit Pope. What do you, I know you've seen this. I know you've seen, you maybe even spoke about this before, but how real is this? Is this an accurate representation of what these guys sign up to be a Jesuit? Is this, would you say that this is on par, or is this a complete hoax?
That is such a good question. And so again, everything that they will allow to go out there isn't all misinformation, and it could be like 90% true. So I would say at least as a minimum, that oath is directionally accurate and very strong in that sort of direction. And one of the reasons why I say that is because the Jesuits are an initiatory order. Initiatory order is a polytheist concept that the secret societies have created. And that's important to understand because the Jesuits are one of the arms that the Rosicrucians are going to create inside the Catholic Church to replace the fallen Templars. And of course, we see Jesuits early on being on sort of the front end of exploration, controlling information, destroying things. We also know that they were charged to take over education within the Catholic Church. So just as with the Royal Society, it has control over education outside the Catholic Church, they needed an organization also in the church. And why this is all important is because if you look at how the Jesuits were founded as this secret society, they're going to swear oaths and they're going to have mystical secrets and things like that. And if you go right back to sort of their occult history on that formation, is that they are a group that interprets the Bible through the 7 sacred sciences and the philosophies. And so they interpret the Bible allegorically and through a polytheist lens. So they're just another branch of whether or not it's the Gnostics or the Freemasons or whatever you want to call them. And of course, they're set there to also be that driving force to bring about universal religion. So they have their own agenda. And you know, the Jesuits were formed by essentially 3 main individuals, although there's a few more of them. And so, you know, everybody is familiar with Ignatius of Loyola, and also Francis Xavier, and of course Peter Farber are the main organizers that are going to create this organization, this initiatory organization. And what's important to understand about these people is 2 of them are Basques or Beziquis, and they're the guys who have, not the guys, but the people who call themselves Homo Atlantis. I think I covered this off in one of your shows earlier, but just sort of quickly, who settle in southwest France and northwest Spain shortly after the flood. Their language doesn't really have a European source, and they kind of come out of nowhere. And they say that they are survivors of before the flood, and they start the Egyptian civilization, the Scythia civilization, and the Mesopotamian civilization after the flood. And they are the most pure line of the bloodlines. They run into a clash with the migration of giants out of the Middle East, and the elitism of the Basque causes a disruption in the power sort of struggle, and you have a diaspora of the Basques is where I'm going with that. And they have as high as 80% Rh negative blood. Some studies say as low as 50, but somewhere between 50 and 80 would be sort of in that end zone. So you have these bloodlines of Nephilim. You have the mystical religions and the 7 sciences, and in fact, you know, most of these 3, they're educated for the most part through the mystical sciences and and coming out of the mystery schools, and so they're the ones who are going to start this organization. And, you know, they have had rather a successful career, if I can put it that way, or hundreds and hundreds of years since about the early 1500s when they're formed, of success in what they're trying to do. And why is that all important today? Is because today you have a Jesuit who is a black pope and is now the white pope on the throne of Rome. And you now have him usurping control about, a year to a year and a half ago over the Knights of St. John, which is an extraordinarily powerful organization that was very similar to the Templars. And of course, these are also made up of the royal bloodlines as well. You have to be a royal bloodline to be a member of the Knights of St. John or the Knights of Rhodes or the Knights of Malta, whatever you want to talk about them. And he has united that. And there was sort of this internal Catholic rivalry where they both reported to the Pope before. But now he has, he replaced the Grand Master of the Knights of St. John, and with the assistant sort of Grand Master, or the secondary Grand Master, or the Vice President Grand Master, whatever you want to call him, and that was 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗄𝗃𝗃, and he's got a longer name than that. But now it's all working in unity. And as I mentioned earlier, the reference point on this is that I think we can see the end time on the horizon, and we need this universal church. And I believe that universal church is probably going to be Rome. So as you see all of this coming together, you start to see the fulfillment of what is likely to be the church that has, two lambs or two horns like a lamb, and that is going to speak like the dragon in the end time, because it's going to have this Christian veneer. So you start to see them preparing it for the false prophet by changing doctrine and introducing the Mary cult, and to prepare people for deception and doctrinal change. And I think we're going to see, and a unity of the churches. And you see Francis working very, very hard in not just uniting, let's say, the Anglican Church and other churches back into sort of one sort of Christian church, but he's trying to cross over and invite in all the other religions of the world, because this has to be an umbrella religion for the end time. So just a quick sort of history in terms of what we're talking about here for a frame of reference, and sort of linking that as to why that's important for the end time and where it fits.
That was quite the mouthful. You always explain it so very well. Let me ask, when you saw this story, because I know this happened quite a while ago, but I haven't had a chance to talk to you since then. What was the first thing that popped in your head when you see that Pope Francis is saying that Jesus was a failure on the cross?
Yeah, it was a failure of the cross. Well, he talks in double entendres.
Like a parable?
Yeah, it has an allegorical meaning, so that he can get away with it to a certain degree, and it fools most Christians.
Oh my.
But what it's designed to do is also speak to his occult audience and what his true beliefs are. And so it's like when he's talking in Italian, he loves to talk about the morning star.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, I
Yeah.
can't remember exactly when, but they had a whole chorus singing about Lucifer over and over and over.
Yeah.
It was unreal.
So they can say Lucifer over and over and over. So it's just, again, it's kind of one of those things. And if you look at all of his arguments, it's almost a double entendre all the time. And in this case, what he's basically saying, and understanding what I said earlier, is that they interpret the Bible allegorically. And so let me give you an example of what you'll hear quite regularly, is that nobody believes, they'll say, that Jonah was actually swallowed by a whale, because nobody could survive 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a whale. So that's a parable. It's it's a story, right? And the reason why they do that is, again, the Gnostics on the inside, in preparation for what they're going to bring about in the end time, and goes directly to what Francis is saying in terms of his double entendre and his secondary meaning about the cross being a failure. So what do I mean by that? So Jesus during the time that he was here, he says there will be only one sign for this wicked generation, sort of paraphrasing things, and that's going to be the sign of Jonah. And as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale, so will the Son of Man be in the grave. And then the resurrection. Well, here's where they go with that. If Jesus says that's the only sign, and his sign is a story that's a parable and not history or real, then so is the crucifixion with the resurrection a hoax, a parable, an allegory. And so to bring about the universal religion, they have to de-deify Jesus. And to do that, they have to come out and discredit the resurrection. Not necessarily the crucifixion, because in their belief system, he was taken off the cross and nursed back to health and had, married Mary Magdalene and had children. That's what they believe. That's not what I believe. So they want to keep Jesus as a prophet, and just imagine a prophet that now sits down alongside Zoroaster and Muhammad and Hermes and Moses and Confucius and Buddha and all of these different sort of prophets around the world. He's, to them, one of these people that was a prophet and a teacher who was sent to humankind to help show humankind the way to godhood, which is what they're promising. So they're going to use that type of doctrinal change and be able to refer back to what Pope Francis said in the past to discount Jesus as actually being the Son of God, the Word of God who came from God and went back to him and is coming again, so that they can set up the end time for their false Messiah. And everything they're going to do for the false Messiah is going to be a counterfeit. And so they have to counterfeit everything to duplicate it, because they've just destroyed what Jesus said. And this is what catches everybody off guard. So if you see World War III in the end time, which is the Gog War, the Joel 1 and 2 or Revelation 9 war, everybody will think that is going to be Armageddon, but that's the counterfeit Armageddon, so Antichrist can rise to power. And that's what the universal church is there to do, is present Antichrist the platform to world government. So he's going to be part of the negotiation through the universal church to bring about world government. So the universal church is in place, then the world government, and then Antichrist rises to power and is crowned at the 3.5-year point of the last 7 years. So understand the role that the church, the Roman church, is there to do in preparation for the end time. And when you understand he's changing doctrine all of the time, and every speech he's making is designed to create this base for this next big gambit that they're going to try and do, then all of a sudden you understand why he's saying such strange things, and they can mean two different things to whichever audience that he's speaking to.
Unbelievable. In your opinion, what is making the people that follow this guy, and he's not even being stealth about it. I know he's speaking in double entendres, he's speaking in parables, but it's so blasphemous and right out in the open. How is it he still has such a, fervent following, if that's even a word?
Well, so and understand, my wife is Catholic and I do attend Catholic churches. They don't tend to question things, and they don't tend to research the Bible. They tend to let them be taught. And I'm not trying to be, dismissive of Catholics, because they're good people. The leadership's a whole different ballgame, and so it tends to only be the Protestants that sort of take a step back and say, wait a minute, that just didn't sound right. That's way off. Like, what the heck is he saying, or what the heck is he doing? And so he tends to get away with that. And within the church, you always have this pushback from the conservatives, and there is still pushback in the church, but it gets less and less and less, because at the same time, this whole takeover of the Knights of St. John was going on, he replaces the person who was a conservative who's in charge of doctrine, right? And he's pushing back against Francis all of the time, but so he replaces him with another Jesuit. So now you have the Jesuits in charge of doctrine, which is now makes a pushback on doctrine very, very difficult within the Catholic Church.
All right, so I was trying to keep this going and look up when the last time I had you on, because this wasn't such a prevalent thing, even though this is listed 2017, 2018.
Yep.
What do you make of this nonstop, never-ending forcing of? I mean, we've gone beyond the gay and lesbian community to transgender, and they're now teaching it to children. I mean, this is popping up in schools all over the country.
Yeah. Well, anything that is has the capability of leading people away from God and has the capability of wedging literalist Christians from the rest of the world, and anything that can be used against Christians as sort of hate speech is the tactic that they're employing. So clearly, the more they make this a public issue and impose it even more, the more conservative Christians and literalist Christians tend to speak out against it. And the more we become targets as being bigots because we're talking about what the Bible says. And they're using that as also a platform to begin tearing down the Bible as well. So again, they can fold it into the universal religion because they're going to have to change it.
I don't know if you saw the video, but I did this video, I think maybe in 2015, 2016. I can't remember. But the new Satanic Temple's headquarters was moved to Salem, Massachusetts. You know, the Salem witch trial, so forth and so on. Well, that's a stone's throw from me. So I grabbed my camera, I paid my $13, and I went in. And this is the place that houses the 9-foot-tall Baphomet that everyone sees every place, every time the Satanic Church shows up. So I went in the place, I got video, you know, they call it an art gallery, and it's every single solitary statue that they had that looks like the one that I'm showing right now. It's incredibly I don't know, pornographic. Every one of them has an erection, so forth and so on. They all have boobs, whatever.
Yep, they're variation of the pan god, right?
Yes, just like what I'm showing, just different iterations all over the place. That was the entirety of the Satanic Temple. So I asked the woman, you know, they're telling me not to record, and I'm saying, oh, of course I won't, but I did anyways. I'm asking her, like, what's the deal with this statue? Like, why is it? How come it's not permanently mounted? She said the deal is any place in the United States that they put up the 10 Commandments or anything to do with Jesus, we instantly throw this thing on a trailer and we drive down there. Now, the one thing, you know, to counter it, you know, put the giant, this is a massive statue, 9 foot tall, weighs a couple of tons. It's huge. But unlike the picture I'm showing you right now where the Baphomet has breasts like a woman, the statue that the Satanic Temple uses doesn't have it. It's a flat-chested, like just like a man. And she said the reason we did that is that way there people can't complain because it looks obscene.
Yeah.
I just found that unbelievably underhanded and sneaky. But then when you think about it, I mean, these people are serving the father of lies, and they seem to understand what the consequences are going to be on the other end.
Yeah. And so, and this is also the same God or the same kind of God when you say Baphomet, or we could say Cern, or we could say Cernunnos, or we could say Pan or Bacchus, and on and on and on. It's the same type of this goat god that we're talking about. So either the same God or there's a whole series of degraded goat gods for the rebellion before the flood. Most of them, I think, are in the abyss, but who knows? There could be some goat gods outside the abyss as well. But where I'm going with this is that if you look back at their occult history and why is this goat god, whatever name that you want to call him, so prevalent? Well, this is the same God that is described as Azazel that we hear about in First Enoch, and he's the one who is attributed all of the crimes of the antediluvian world and for providing a significant amount of knowledge that is going to accelerate the antediluvian world into rebellion and into corruption, and which brings about the flood. So it's important to understand about this, and if people are interested in this, I've got some of this on a commentary that I just posted last Friday on my timeline on Facebook. So you can go there, or you can get a hold of me through the website and I can send it to you. But anyways, in Leviticus 16, you have the Day of Atonement. And on the Day of Atonement, there are 2 goats that are sacrificed, one to the wilderness and one for the atonement of Israel's sins. And in most translations, it says scapegoat. And understand that Azazel is the one who takes on all of the sins for the antediluvian world in First Enoch. But if you take scapegoat back to Hebrew, it's the word Azazel. So what's important about that is this is the leader of the Watchers, and you have this weird sort of scapegoat sacrifice that's going on in the Day of Atonement. So is there a connection there to Azazel, who is depicted as a goat god and depicted as a, having a goat representative being sacrificed on the Day of Atonement? And then we look at Antichrist, and in Daniel 11, as I recall, he is going to honor on his rise to power, and then when he's in power, what it says as the God of forces. But if you take forces back to Hebrew, the root word is azaz, A-Z-A-Z, and again, most angelic names have an E-L on the end. Just as Azazel, as you take that back as a scapegoat, will be rooted back into azaz. And there's a series of words of forces and fortresses and things that are used in Daniel 11 that goes back to the same sort of root of the word into Hebrew. So now we have this God that is going to be honored in the end time after Antichrist is either in power or rising to power, depending on how you want to look at Daniel 11, who is honoring this apparently Azazel God. And so also in Enoch, you have Azazel, who is, and this is a separate commentary if people want to see this on this part of it, equated with spoiling and destroying the antediluvian world, which is very interesting because if we get into Jeremiah 51 and the destruction of Babylon, which happens in the end time, and this is a prophecy for the end time, you have the spirit of a destroyer, and in the King James Version it says wind instead of spirit, but I think the prophecy speaks to the spirit aspect as opposed to a wind of destruction. And then verses 48 to 54, you have the spoiler and the destruction aspect going on in terms of the words there, and that's going to go back onto the destroy aspect. I won't take the spoiler word back because it doesn't directly go to where I'm going, but I'll explain it in the post that I have out for you guys. That word goes back to abad, which is rooted in Abaddon. Now, if you roll forward to Revelation 9, who is the king of the abyss? Who Azazel is also said as the leader of the Watchers in Enoch and the host that follows them that are sentenced into the abyss. Well, you have Abaddon and Apollyon. So now you have Abaddon, connected back to destroyer, and also Jeremiah with spoiler, and you have this Azazel and you have this goat god suggesting that Abaddon is Azazel. And what's important about that is that he's also called in Greek Apollyon. So now if we look at a description that applies to Antichrist, he's called the son of perdition. And in Revelation, this perdition Antichrist figure once was, now is not, but will be again. Right? And he comes up out of the abyss. Well, perdition goes back in Greek to a whole series of words, but the first word is G684, apollio. And as you go through that grouping of words, that goes back to Apollyon. So now you have Antichrist connected some way with Apollyon and Abaddon as the destroyer, and honoring a god of forces that goes back to the word Azazel. And then we understand that Antichrist receives a mortal head wound in the end time. I think this is when he becomes the avatar of Azazel, Abaddon, Apollyon. And that's why he's going to honor the god of forces, Azazel, in Daniel 11. And that's where a lot of his great power really comes to bear as he, takes over the world as the dictator of the world, and the end time, the last 3.5 years start to fall on us. So I know that was a long rabbit hole, Richie, but when we're talking about this goat god character, or if you're talking about CERN and you don't understand the goat god connections, then you miss a lot of the story. If for people who aren't familiar with all of this information.
Gary, you don't have to explain yourself. I've spoken to you numerous times. You're just very, very thorough. That's all there is to it. I was showing your website, and you've got a lot of really good videos on here. You've done some great interviews, and it's amazing how you hone in on certain specific topics and cover them all so thoroughly. Giants and the Nephilim, the order, we went over this. We did this video before too. The Luciferian Order of the Knights of Templar, the Third Reich, and then of course Azazel, leader of the Watchers. I can't help but think that these people are trying to emulate the Baphomet, and it doesn't. I can't possibly fathom what it is they're thinking. Like, how are they going to try to bring about end times and things are going to end well for them? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, I don't believe, and a lot of people disagree with me with this, but I don't believe that the fallen angels and probably the Nephilim demon spirits believe they can actually win. I mean, they've been roughed up quite a bit, and they know the power of God, and they know that God created them, and that they know they're around his throne. They know he's all powerful. I think they were trying to establish a different realm, just as Hell, which is the Hebrew word that the Lucifer Latin word is juxtaposed on in the King James Version. The actual translation is Hail El Ben Shakar, so Hell El, the son of the morning. But anyways, in that particular passage out of Isaiah 14, it talks about him wanting to be like God and having his own realm like God. So what I think what it's portraying to us is that they didn't think they could win, but they thought they could cause enough destruction, cause enough doubt that God would say in his grace that, okay, if you don't want to live by my rules, because I'm such a good God, I'm going to let you have your own realm on the others, in another universe or another dimension or somewhere else. But of course, that's not going to happen. And I was just going to finish though. And so they know they can't win, but they also know humans are gullible, and they use humans like beasts to slander God and to slander Jesus to do their purposes, because they convince humans that they actually can win, even though they know they can't. And I think that's why they follow, because they believe they are like the rebels in Star Wars who are fighting for their freedom from the evil god of the universe, or the evil empire of the universe. So I think that's what they're doing. Sorry I interrupted you there, Richie.
No, it's you actually said what I was going to say. I just thought that they were going to try to pull as many human souls down there to make God somehow change his mind, because it's astounding to me how people walk around these days. And I mean, it's accelerated again since the last time we spoke. It's accelerated exponentially how these guys are now wrapping themselves in the veil of science, and anything religious, anything to do with creation is just absolutely ridiculous and laughable. And yet they're doing the exact, their science is a religion. They're building preposterous weapons. We've talked about CERN before. We've talked about ITER. Like trying to reproduce a neutron star on the Earth. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
The
What
only
could
thing
go wrong?
the only thing that could make sense is that, I mean, using CERN, using the Lucifer telescope in conjunction with this, I mean, it looks like they're trying to forge weapons that'll stop Jesus when he comes back the second time.
Well, I think that's and that's might have what they have done in before the flood is you have these seven sacred sciences, and you have this illicit knowledge from heaven, and you have this rapid ramp up of technology, so that they can join in the battle and sort of help fight in that revolution. And so I think that is exactly what we're seeing today. And so when we see what they're doing at CERN, and we understand that, CERN is basically another pan-type god. So it's not just this anacronym they made up, and that comes out of the Etruscan pantheon, or Cernunnos, which comes out of the Druidic pantheon. We understand that CERN is essentially located over a temple dedicated to Apollyon. Then one wonders whether or not there's more than just what they're saying, that, how many different aspects that they're trying to marry up with quantum computing and with artificial intelligence to maybe go into that different dimension in the physical location where the abyss might be located. And I don't know whether the abyss is located, where CERN is, but, if you understand that another dimension can occupy the same space, but it would make sense to be able to do that directly from a physical perspective, and you create some technology to go interdimensional, which quantum computing is kind of designed to do, then you'd probably want to be fairly close to that from a physical world perspective.
Well, that's the claim. I mean, according to people that have studied this stuff ad nauseum, CERN is indeed built directly over the temple to Apollyon, Abaddon,
Yep.
whatever you want to, whatever
Yep.
whatever the name is. That's
Yep.
what they're doing. And the thing
Yep.
is, they call us conspiratorial for bringing these things up, and yet they show
Yep.
everything that they do has something to do with the occult, the names, the numerology. It's just flagrant. It's absolutely flagrant. And I can't help but think that they believe they're going to somehow change the end of the Bible, because it's funny, because your book is on Genesis. So the two things out of the entire Bible they attack more than anything is the book of Genesis and the book of Revelations. And I think there's a reason for that.
Yeah, they have to change the beginning and they have to change the end, so that, and then they discredit everything in between. But what we're referring to when we talk about this temple that's dedicated there, that's in 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗃, and that's Pouilly in Switzerland, and that derives from Latin. I'm trying to remember what it is. It's a polyku or something to that effect, or polyacom, I think is what it is. Yeah, polyacom, now that my memory serves me right. And so that is the Latin transliteration, polyacom, of Apollyon. So there is a temple there. It goes back to the Roman times, and this is the god of the underworld, just as Azazel is the king of the underworld, and just as it seems Abaddon is king of the underworld, and just as what comes out of these things are these destroyer gods called the scorpion beings. And again, if somebody wants information on Revelation 9 and these scorpion beings, these things were created. I have a handout for that. Is where I'm going with that. These are the beings that were created in the antediluvian age, that's recorded in the 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗄 and in the Epic of Gilgamesh by something called Tiamat, which is a god of polytheism, which is very much similar to a Leviathan in the Bible, and I cover that off in my book. So anyways, these things are created as destroyers of minor gods. So these are powerful beings, and their description is exactly like what is described in Revelation. So these things may actually been some sort of creation of these fallen angels that are going to be attacking people in the end time, and they're led by Abaddon and Apollyon. So whenever
Yeah,
this abyss
Gary,
gets open, this is
hold on.
scary. What's that?
Say that again. These you're talking. You're talking the scorpions from the pit were created in the antediluvian time
Yeah.
to destroy gods?
Yes.
By whom? Who
But
made these?
Tiamat, the goddess Tiamat, which is a Leviathan type of
I
god.
didn't hear that part. Oh my.
Yeah, yeah. So these things are, and she created a lot of different gods, but these things are very much a destroyer type of god. She also created like the Hydra and the dragon as it goes, the hairy hero, Fishman, a bullman, and several other interesting um, beings. But the descriptions are, and here's, and if you want to Google it, you've got the computer out. They're called the 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗄. That's AQRABUAMELU, or the 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗄, GIRTABILU. And these things were large beings. I'm going to just list off some descriptions so that people know I'm not making this up. These things were large beings with the head and the torso of and arms of a man and the body of a scorpion. They had bird legs and feet. They had wings. They launched powerful destructive weaponry depicted as some of the arrows and some of the bows, that they're flinging with in these reliefs that are all throughout Sumeria and in some cases around the world and into Egypt. And they stung their prey from a venomous tail, just as it's described in Revelation 9. So on my post, I've got pictures of these different beings if people want to get a look at that. And what's important to understand is when you take scorpion back to Hebrew, it's the word a crab. So it's
Can you spell that one more time? I think I missed it.
AQRAB86137. So when you take the word scorpion back to Hebrew, that's H6137, a crab, which is AQRAB, and that's the first part of the word to 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗄, which these scorpion beings are called. And then after Tiamat is killed and slain, just as Leviathan is slain in the Bible, and then these beings are used to guard some of the sun temples, and then they're used to guard the passage to Hades and to hell, which Abaddon, Azazel, Apollyon, are gods of and are imprisoned in.
That's crazy. This sounds like a game. That is crazy. You've researched you've researched every single solitary facet. It's amazing to me. Absolutely astounding. You must never leave the house.
Yeah, I tend to get obsessed with things at times to try and figure out what the true meaning is and the larger meaning of it. But every time I do, it just sort of connects more dots into what prophecy and prehistory is telling us. And so one of the things that I like to do is I like to look to prehistory to define what the end time is going to be, because we're clearly told nothing is new under the sun. And Jesus clearly says to me, and I will expand this to make it a larger comment than what some people like to use, but it will be like the days of Noah and his second coming, will be like the days of Noah in the end time. So what were the days of Noah like? It was more than just people having violence. It was the days of the Nephilim. It was the days of these ridiculously saturated world of these crazy beings that are recorded in occult history and mythologies and religions all around the world. And I think they totally corrupted the antediluvian world. Just as you take that back to Hebrew, it means totally spoiled, totally corrupted, decayed, changed from the beginning, so that they not only just had Nephilim in the antediluvian age, but I think they had this either through sexual copulation with the gods, or DNA manipulation from the technology that they developed, changed all of the species and of the animals that were in the antediluvian world, as well as the plants. And I think that's why with the flood that God brings on, he actually calls the animals to the ark, because he knows the ones that aren't corrupted. And he's going to start the new world with 8 human beings who aren't corrupted in terms of spiritually or physically, and we have their genealogies to prove that. And I think he did the same thing with the animals, and that he knew from each representative species what was uncorrupted with DNA or God manipulation or technology manipulation, so that they could restart the world with uncorrupted beings.
Let me ask you real quick. Let me punch this up. Do you think any of these corrupted animals are still around? Because I've always had my doubts about this particular little fella, the platypus.
Yeah.
It's a beaver with a duck's bill, and it's incredibly poisonous. It has I mean, this doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's been pieced together, right? So
exactly. I mean,
and
I know it sounds funny, but I mean, it makes no sense. And then it's poisonous. How many mammals are poisonous?
they're not. I mean, there's just not very many. In fact, I'm struggling to come up with an example, which is
I
a
can't
good
think of
thing.
any. And I'm kind of into that stuff. It's just crazy to me, but it would explain all the drawings that were everywhere.
Yep.
I think that DNA manipulation was something that they did pretty much freely. I don't think it was a big deal. I have a hard time believing that, the theory of evolution. I think it's actually the joke's on us, because we're devolving. There's a lot of guys that have studied this, and they just show that we're a copy of a copy of a copy, and that indeed nothing new is under the sun.
Yep.
They're just getting it all back. They're just getting back to where they were when, Egypt was lit up the way it was. Because I don't believe the story about slaves dragging blocks up a piece of wood to put it in to make the king's chamber and the queen's chamber, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, they had technology for that, and or it was created by the gods, depending on how you want to view history coming out of mythology and the occult religions. So what the Freemasons say is that the Templars, the pyramids were built by either Enoch or by the technology that he had developed to be able to build those megaliths. And there's no doubt the Nephilim had their hand in it after the days of Noah, or the 6th generation of Jared, when they were created into the world, and they partnered with this knowledge to be able to create these big megaliths. And the Freemasons accredit Enoch, and this is Enoch son of Cain, not Enoch son of Jared, so that people know who I'm referring to, because there's 2 Enochs in the genealogies of Genesis, and they like to conflate them so that they confuse people. They believed he traveled all around the earth, and he's known as many different names, whether it's Fouché in China, and or he's even kind of conflated with Thoth and Tout and Hermes and so many other different names, but he's thought to have gone to England to create Stonehenge and Machu Picchu and all these other places where he provided the knowledge to be able to build these things so that they could make megaliths, not only to honor their gods, but to mark their civilization with the technology that it had that we can't do today. And that's the thing to remember. If you kind of doubt how large of a technology they had for a pool base, or how far advanced that it was and what they were capable of doing, if we can't do what they were doing today, and we're not in the end time, and these days are supposed to be like the days of Noah, then that means we have not yet caught up to their technology that they had. And therefore we're being helped and accelerated by fallen angels, by demons, in terms of accelerating our knowledge so that we can catch up, so that we can help with this war and make it plausible that we might be able to win if we want to rebel against the God of the universe. And I think that's all part of that grand deception and illusion of the end time. And when you talk about, the platypus, just to come back to what you were talking about, is that, obviously is an animal that has an ability to survive in water to a certain degree. So why couldn't it survive? And then if you understand some of these other beings that, like Tiamat is thought to have created, you have the dog man with all of those mythologies and things that are out there even to this day. You have the fish man, and you have reliefs of these fish man people in ancient Sumeria. So there's all sorts of different things that could have survived into today, and I realize I'm now speculating, but I'm just giving a basis for why some of these mythoses continue throughout the millennia and are still around today.
Feel free to speculate, Gary. You're on my channel now. Who cares? I value your opinion, so it works out really, really well.
It's go ahead.
Astounding. It's astounding. I know you've been on with Rob Skeever. I've had Rob on before.
Mm-hmm.
He said something one time that really stuck with me, that, we were, for as far as we know, because history is just a story that's been told to us. We weren't there. We don't know. As far as we know, we were horse and buggies for the longest time. And then suddenly, all of a sudden, trains, planes, automobiles, and allegedly rockets. What do you make of that?
Well, I make of it that we are being helped. It's happening way too fast. It is inexplicable that we could be moving along this quickly. And I think it's, as I said, it's that information is coming through the secret societies, with the information coming from their contact with whatever you want to call them, the Great White Brotherhood, the Celestial Mafia, the Celestial Brotherhood. I think they're getting information to stimulate it. And I think it's done so that, again, that the weaponry will deceive us, that we think we're part of this galactic rebellion that we have to stand up and fight for, and we'll actually have a chance to win. Now, we see another analogy of this back in World War II. So if you imagine the idea and buy into the concept that a lot of things that happened in World War II with Nazi Germany is analogous for what's going to happen in the end time. You have a Messianic figure, you have the new man, which is just another creation of more Nephilim concept. You have the real ideology, where they're trying to recreate the Nephilim of the antediluvian age. You have Hitler setting up the Reichschurch in 1933, which is an Aryan Nordic ideology that is morphs out of theosophy, which they call Ariosophy. And of course, theosophy is created by the Gnostics, who are the Rosicrucians. And it's going to be the religion that builds a bridge between the end time between science and religion, which it was created to do. And of course, New Age is an offshoot of theosophy. Now, where I'm going with all of this is I just wanted to quickly list a few things. And of course, he's trying to become Antichrist of the world, the Führer of the world. He looks at himself as a Messianic figure or an Antichrist figure. He's just trying to do it through war, as opposed to what's going to happen in the end time. Now you have this bankrupt nation from 1933 forward that is going to develop weaponry at a pace that is unprecedented, including the Blitzkrieg battle strategy, which absolutely revolutionizes war. And we have things not only that are created that are like, the Tiger tanks and the Panzer tanks, which are the same model that's used today. Is how far advanced they were, that had that low profile and the armor, that it's inexplicable how they developed these things. And, if they could have produced their technology in enough numbers, they probably would have won the war. But just think about some of these other things that they were inventing, like the jet engine and the stealth single wing fighter and the rocket engine. And some people believe with that bell-shaped thing that went missing, that was a technology to travel interdimensionally, but that's speculation because we don't have it. But it looks a lot like what is in a lot of the occult religions that were used as portals into other worlds. And so this technology develops within about 10 years to a level that is just unexplainable. And if you listen to them, understanding that they also were a theosophic perversion known as Ariosophy, and that they were created by the secret societies, which I won't go into all of them because we're not doing a whole show on them, and that they believe at that level they actually talk to these celestial masters, and that they have said that they receive this knowledge from their gods, and then they applied it, then if it's analogous to the end time, which we're closing in on, we should continue to see that sort of escalation, because it's always the same story. There's nothing new under the sun.
These guys were into we went over there with wooden propellers on airplanes. These guys were shooting rockets and jets, and they were big time into the Thule Society and the I can't think of the other one, the women with the long hair. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I didn't quite catch what you had said on the sentence before. So
the what was the things that Hitler were doing? The Thule Society,
and the Thule Society, the German Orden Society,
Society.
Yeah, and the Vril Society. These are all organizations that come out of the Rosicrucians and Freemasons, and there's many other societies that they have, but they all come together, and they have that Vril and Volkish ideology that they're going to overlay on the on theosophy. And what that means is when they overlay the Vril, that's the Superman, the new man thing that comes back. And when they overlay Volkish ideology, that takes them back to Thule, which they believe is the Atlantean, German Atlantis, probably like Asgard. And that was ruled over by giants and blonde hair, blue-eyed giants. And what's important to understand about that, as they were trying to create the new Atlantis, which they're trying to create now, as well, called New Atlantis and the New Age, is that the Atlantean world government had 10 nations and empires, and they were ruled over by these Titan Nephilim, and they had blonde hair and blue eyes. Or red hair and hazel eyes, which is the other version of the Atlantean. So they had two different hair colors and eye colors. And of course, that's why they embraced the blonde hair, blue eye, because that's part of that Volkish ideology that they believed. And they also overlaid the Grail ideology into their whole belief system. So they had this huge simmering occult basis for their religion and their politics that merged into one, which I think we're going to see in the end time again. And they would have forced the Rice Church on everybody, had they got their way. And during the Nuremberg trials and other trials after World War II, Winston Churchill and Truman refused to let this occult knowledge enter into the courts because they didn't want them to have the ability to plead guilty through insanity. They wanted to make sure they were going to convict them because they had gone so rogue to what the New World Order was trying to do, which is why they had to be defeated. But that's another rabbit hole. But where we're going with this is this is the same type of thing that is going to form the universal religion and the universal government, but they won't do it through war this time. It'll basically be pretty much set up with the universal religion and those 10 groups of nations or empires for Antichrist to take over in the last 7 years.
Did you see that the site that I just had up? Have you must have watched this whole Asgardia Space Kingdom?
No, I haven't seen that.
You haven't seen any of this?
No,
This is a 171st by population size. It's literally Blavatsky's. It's the Freemasonic. It's everything in one. These guys are going to have a space force and so forth and so on.
Right.
Called Asgardia. So it all just comes right back around again, and people don't even notice it.
And they call it Asgardia.
That's it, Asgardia.
From the island of Asgard, which is, again, some people think it's either a separate civilization, Atlantis, or just another version of Atlantis. So, and in their cult history, they have anywhere from 4 to 9 different major civilizations before the flood.
Well, again, nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, nothing new under the sun. And you know, the Club of Rome, which was created by the secret societies in the late 60s, they were formed, and they report to the Rosicrucians. They were formed to divide the world into 10 groups of nations, trading blocks, or spheres of influence. And what's interesting about that, when I say they're trying to set up the new Atlantis, just as Francis Bacon wrote about the new Atlantis way back when, because he was, of course, Rosicrucian, is that Atlantis, as you read in Timaeus and Critias, was made up of 10 nations, and they were trying to conquer the whole world through war again. They weren't able to accomplish that, but this is the golden age. And that's the golden age that they're trying to set up again. And this is the age where Poseidon goes to, and or Iapetus, depending on which version of Atlantis that you're going to be talking about. He's called two different names. Goes to either Clyde or Clymene again, depending on which translation that you're using, and creates 10 Titan kings to rule over what they call the helm of world government of the Golden Age, and where all the science and the technology and all of the great things came out of the antediluvian world. And so they're trying to recreate this. And what's so interesting about that is that you have in Daniel and you have in Revelation this 10 nation empire, this 10 king empire of the end time. And that's what they're trying to put out. I've got some pictures and of how the Club of Rome has done this. It varies a little bit from picture to picture if people are interested in that as well. So understand that this is an organization which, again, has its own specific agenda, just as what we were talking about with the Jesuits, as do all of the secret organizations, secret societies. They all have their own specific objective to bringing about the end time, because they want this rendezvous with destiny. They want this showdown, and they want to bring it on any time other than the ordained period, but they'll accept the ordained times if they have to.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The gall, and to think that they're going to somehow change the outcome that's already been written.
Well, and we see in Daniel that he's going to try and change the times.
Unbelievable. Gary, I want to thank you for coming back on. I want to get you back on whenever you get a chance so we can go over the Nazis, and I'll be a little bit better prepared. This was my first time doing a live stream in a really, really long time. So
yeah, I think doing a show on the Nazis and the history and how they came together and how they're analogous for the end time makes a spectacular discussion and show. So I'd love to come on and do that.
Without a doubt, man, because it plays into what we're looking at right now. It's unbelievable, but again, nothing new under the sun. All right, brother, I am going to hit you up. We'll figure out another date. I am going to get out of here and shut this down. I appreciate everybody joining us in the chat. We got 1,350 people watching. Anything? Everybody can find you at gen6conspiracy.com, Gary Wayne. And the one thing I wanted to ask you, you said you had handouts on a couple of specific topics. Where can people find those?
You can get a hold of me through the website, and I can send you either the Facebook link to it, or I can send you the Word document. You can also get a hold of me at Facebook and message me or ask me a question on my timeline. And I'll provide it through there. Or you can contact me on Twitter at GaryWayne63, at GaryWayne63. Yeah, I will, whichever way you want it. The nice thing about the Facebook link is the pictures come with it. So if you want, to see something really, really great, ask for the, and try and ask for some of these things by subject, because I make the mistake of offering these things out on shows quite regular, and it becomes a blur. So I never remember all the ones I mention on a particular show. So if you can, if you want the Scorpion Gods, ask for that as an example, because those pictures are spectacular. And I would also say ask for the Lion Men as well. I have a great one on the linemen of Moab and Gad, and link that back to being another Nephilim type of race and back to the lion gods.
Unreal. Unreal. You're like a fountain of knowledge, man.
Yeah, I like I said, I get obsessed with it, but I just love doing the research on this and then connecting the dots and then trying to communicate it in a way that people kind of understand it. So,
Well, for those that haven't actually read the book, it's big, it's intimidating looking, but it works. It works. It's a really, how many pages? 900 and change?
it's just over 800, 120 pages of endnotes, so it's very well annotated with where I get my information from. But people shouldn't be intimidated because it's average chapter. There's 98 chapters plus an epilogue and a preface. This average is 6 to 7 pages per chapter, and each chapter is a mini story that leads into the next chapter and keeps coming up as the book unfolds. So what that allows you to do is just read one chapter at a time if you want and keep moving forward. Do not try and speed read it. There is so much information in there. You'll start popping some brain cells. So, and it doesn't stop coming at you to the end of the book. So read it as you can digest it, but you can come back to it. And it's set up so that it's, you know, in those types of chapters and topic heads so that you can sort of go back and find it as well. And it also does, you know, I like to have a hard copy, but I also like to use the Kindle version so that I can do quick searches on things, which I find very, very helpful for reference as well.
Is the Kindle version the same as the book? I mean, as far as pages and notes and such?
Yeah,
That's
it
awesome.
is.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it is. Yeah, and you can. So when you go on my website, you can link to, you know, get a signed copy from me if you want, or you can link to Amazon.com or Amazon.ca or BarnesandNoble.com, and Barnes and Noble has it available. My book is distributed through Bookmaster, so you could also order it through your local bookstore if you wanted to support them as well. And the Kindle version connection is on there as well. And for Canadians, Amazon.ca, plus it's available on the shelves on most of the stores at Indigos and Chapters.
You're famous, brother. You're getting world famous. All right. Gary Wayne, everybody in the chat, Richie from Boston, thank you for joining us. September 11th, we're still here, and I am out. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.